If you've been diagnosed with either osteopenia or osteoporosis, in this video I'm going to tell you how I want you to start bending from now on in order to reduce the stress on the anterior or the front part of your vertebral column. Let's go. Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm a physical therapist from Integrated Physical Therapy in Bellingham, Washington. Building new bone can be done, but it's a complex situation. Any comprehensive physical therapy program has to have 4 elements if you want to be successful in building bone. Number 1, you have to have strengthening exercises at an appropriate interval. Number 2, you have to have weight bearing or impact exercises. Number 3, you have to have balance exercises because the best way to prevent a fracture is not falling in the first place. And the 4th thing is posture. We have to be aware of our posture and work on things. If you're already a member of Live Well 50, we have a full osteoporosis course on the site. If you're not a member of Live Well 50, make sure you check it out. Link is down below. And be proactive with your health because bone health is critical. Osteoporosis has been called the silent thief. And the reason is because oftentimes we're losing bone mass, but we have no symptoms. Sometimes, unfortunately, until it's too late. One of the first things I teach my clients with osteoporosis is how to bend or flex properly. And it's critical because not bending isn't really functional. We're bending constantly throughout the day. Hundreds of times we're bending over to do things. But what exactly happens with that repeated flexion? One of the things that happens with osteoporosis is that the anterior part of the vertebral body, or the front part here, starts to lose bone mass density. And it can actually collapse and have a wedge fracture or a compression fracture. So we've all seen, unfortunately, the typical osteoporotic person who has a hyperkyphosis of their upper thoracic spine. And the reason is because this anterior part of the vertebral body is starting to collapse into what we call a wedge fracture. So we want to avoid repeated flexion activities, especially with compression. Now, I don't know at your house, but at my house, I do the laundry. Yes, I do. And I don't know how I got roped into that, but I've been doing the laundry for a long time. So something as simple as bending over to pick up a laundry basket. So we've got our basket right through there. Now imagine the way most of us bend is we bend forward this way here. All this motion is coming from my lumbar spine. My spine is rounded here, and I'm picking this up and back up this way. So this may not even be a painful movement for me to do, but what I'm doing is, you can visualize it, I'm loading up the front part of that vertebral column. And over time, especially if I had a low bone mass density, that's not going to do me any favors. So we need to learn how to hip hinge. And then I want you to use the hip hinge for all of your activities of daily living. So what does a hip hinge look like? Instead of the motion all coming from my lumbar spine, you can see how rounded my lumbar spine is. The idea is to stay nice and flat through the low back, but to drive the hips back. Okay, it takes a little practice to get used to, but I drive the hips back. Now my back is flat and I'm still down here and I can lift something up. The movement's not going to feel natural at first, and so we have to practice that. So what you're going to need is a PVC pipe, a broom handle, just something you have at the house. You'll put it behind your back. You've got 2 contact points, the back of your head and then your sacrum or your tailbone. And you're going to put it right through here. If you have trouble maintaining this, you can always get a belt or something and strap it on here if you have trouble holding it with your arms. Now the idea is, if I bend incorrectly, which is putting load on my lumbar spine, I instantaneously lose the connection in the small of my back. You see how that works? So this is all lumbar spine motion, the way I'm not supposed to move, and I lose contact. However, if I can hip hinge and drive the hips back, now all of a sudden I still maintain the contact at those 2 points. So welcome to your first osteoporotic exercise. We have to get used to this motion. What I try to get my patients to do is to hip hinge for all of your daily flexion activities. How do you know you're doing the hip hinge correctly? First of all, you're going to maintain those 2 contact points, and then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to feel a nice hamstring stretch. Ideally, when we're first practicing, I want you to keep your knees bent, but then don't bend your knees any further. Bent knees and then drive your hips back. You'll have to do this motion every day. I have my clients do about 20 of these hip hinges every single day until it becomes a habit. And then you start using the hip hinge for all activities of daily living that require bending. Imagine putting away your dishes, brushing your teeth, washing your hair, anything that you do where you have to bend, you're automatically going to do that hip hinge. If you don't have that pole with you and you're practicing, put your hand in the small of your back and practice bending forward while you're maintaining that curve. And the back is nice and flat. It'll go a long ways in saving your back and reducing the load on the anterior part of the vertebral body, which unfortunately is starting to lose bone mass density if you have osteopenia or osteoporosis. Something as simple as getting out of a chair can put an additional load, a flexion load onto your spine. So if you look at me from the side, if my posture is a little bit rounded and I go to try to stand up and I'm leaning forward, I want you to notice the flexion in my spine. I'm loading the front of my spine, loading it, and then I stand up. It's not a great way to do that. So what would be a better way to do it? Once again, maintain that hollow in your back. And in the physical therapy world, we talk about nose over toes. So you want to bring your nose over your toes, but keeping your back flat and you're hinging from your hips. So I'm not doing this. I'm bringing nose over toes this way. So my back is now flat, nose over toes, weight on my legs, and I'm standing up. And the whole time, I've avoided that flexion component of my spine. This next way to flex, golfers do a lot. Oftentimes what they'll do is they'll stand on one leg, bend over, pick up the ball, and back up. And what you'll notice with that is my back once again is staying nice and flat, and I'm bending over here and coming up. You may need a little support as you're doing your golfer pickup. But the whole idea is to learn how to bend forward in your activities of daily living that don't put stress into your lumbar spine. If you found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ding, turn on your notification so you never miss another one of my videos.